Hi there, this is Randy Wallace with Fox 26, joined with by
Andy Kahan, Director of Victim Services, Crimestoppers. Let me do a quick hair check.
Makeup.
Hold on. All right, there. That's how long this took me to get ready.
I think it's very clear that yes, I'm the smart one, he's the pretty one. Hey, first I want to say thank you so much for joining our live stream. This is Behind Breaking Bond. Every Tuesday for more than a year now, we've been doing a segment called Breaking Bond with Mr. Khan here. Kind of explain for people that are just tuning in what it's all about.
Well, Breaking Bond actually got started, I want to say March of 20. I started noticing this trend, and the trend was I started seeing defendants who were charged with murder in Harris County, that a lot of them were out on multiple felony bonds. They were given what's called a personal recognizance, better known as a PR bond, or in street terms, better known as a get out of jail free card, or they were on bond and they had forfeited their bond and flew somewhere that we don't know that. And I started making a list, and I started adding all this. And sadly, right now I am up to 154 people that we have categorized as being murdered by a defendant in one of those three categories. And even more disturbing is 154, 117 since 2020.
And those are people that they should be alive right now. They should be alive today if there was not a revolving door at the courthouse.
I think you could plausibly argue that since a majority of them were murdered by defendants out on more than one, two, three, four, sometimes we've seen 7 bonds where they've been out on, you can easily argue, and particularly in the case of the off-duty police officer that was just visiting from New Orleans, who was sitting outside in a restaurant, by the Galleria Saturday at 5 o'clock. A lot of us would do that on a Saturday afternoon. And I think the last thing in the world, he thought he was going to get jacked up and robbed. And the defendant, who's now charged with capital murder, was on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 felony bonds. And that was just 1 year.
And that wasn't the only law officer to lose their life over.
There's been a total of 3 officers that have now on that list that have been murdered by defendants released on multiple felony bonds. The latest was HPD officer William Jeffrey, who was trying to find a bond fugitive and then was gunned down. The other one was Sergeant Kayla Sullivan, and the person charged in her murder was on 3 felony bonds in 3 different counties in 1 month. He was on a felony bond in Harris, Fort Bend, and Galveston County, all in 1 month.
And again, we would all agree that yes, everyone has the right to get a bond while they're awaiting trial. The issue that we've been talking about, and keep in mind, every single person that's out on bond, the main condition for everyone: don't break the law again. Don't get arrested. Don't pick up a new criminal charge. That's what these people are doing. They're not abiding by the conditions of their bond and going back to court. They're allegedly committing more crimes.
And that's something we haven't seen. And I've been doing this 30 years. I've not seen what I'm seeing right now. And you've been doing stories as long as I've been doing this. And, we were talking amongst ourselves. We never did a news story.
No.
Before.
No.
And we've been doing this a long time.
And that would be a huge story. And so, we would remember it.
I would. And I went back and looked. I couldn't find doing any stories. So this is a relatively new phenomenon, primarily that began, I want to say, in the year 2018. So statistical data that was supplied by the Harris County District Attorney's Office during the legislative session, clearly showed the numbers are rising. When you had defendants who were charged with crimes while out on more than 1 bond that have doubled in 2 years, and the PR bond, and we're going to get into something that's going to be happening probably tomorrow on that, but the PR personal recognizance bonds that quadrupled since 2018. And I'm not talking for low-level offenses. We're talking personal recognizance, get out of jail free cards for murder, aggravated robbery, intoxicated manslaughter, and such. I'm talking some of the big time felony crimes, and we've never seen that before.
It was a big issue. This whole felony bond situation was a big issue in the legislative session, the special sessions. A lot didn't come to pass, but one thing did.
One of the bills that actually goes into effect tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow's December, right?
Yes.
I kind of lost track. So tomorrow, effective tomorrow, I guess it goes into effect at midnight tonight, since technically that would be December the 1st. You will no longer be able to get a PR, personal recognizance, get out of jail free card if you are charged with a violent offense. And here's a great example right here. Here's a guy right here. His name is Elsie Leroy Lamadine. On November 25th, which was 5 days ago, he was charged, and he actually got a PR bond for intoxicated manslaughter. I don't know how you get, again, I mean, obviously I take umbrage at getting a personal recognizance bond, particularly for a violent offense, but that's November 25th. Affected midnight tonight, that's not going to happen.
And that's obviously, that's a good thing, but it's not enough, is it?
I mean, that's one of the key provisions, and it's kind of exclusive to Harris County. I mean, Harris County kind of, became known as the PR capital of the world. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Some of the law enforcement officers that I deal with would say defendants would sit back and laugh because they knew they'd be getting out in a few hours. So that was one of the key provisions of Senate Bill 6. The other one, too, was that a magistrate and or a judge will have to actually have the defendant's entire criminal history, and they will actually have to sign off. You and I, we've done stories where we're looking at the signatures.
Right.
And we're
real difficult to tell.
I mean, I have chicken scratch. I mean, it's horrible. But these guys make me look like I'm a world-class hieroglyphics artist, because you can't figure out who's who on it. You're going to have to actually put your John Hancock. Yes, I was aware this person had 7 felony convictions. Yes, I was aware this person was out on 4 felony bonds. And yes, I'm going to go ahead and give you a bond anyway. I really think that's going to have some sort of subliminal effect.
Accountability,
because
yeah.
now you realize that you're actually going to have to put your JQ on it. So that's the other one. The other one that I really like is something that I've been harping on. I really thrive. And one of the reasons that I've been doing this because I believe in data. It's data driven.
Yeah.
It's fact driven. It's document driven. So we've been saying, okay, well, how many defendants released by felony district court judges have gone on to reoffend or been charged with additional crimes after being granted a bond? Senate Bill 6 mandates that each court submit a monthly statistical analysis on defendants that are granted bond in their court. And if they go and commit another crime, that has to be documented. I love that provision.
Yeah, I mean, one of the concerns for the whole breaking bond ongoing series is the question is, are these judges putting public safety before the rights of a defendant? And we all know everyone that's criminally charged, they are accused of a crime. They've not been convicted. But when you look at it from a public safety standpoint, you have to look at someone's criminal history or what they're doing while they're out on bond. If they're committing more crimes or being accused of more crimes, you got to wonder what's going on. I mean, that's kind of telling you we need these people behind bars to stop whatever they're doing, and then we'll get to court, and then they'll go to trial, then we'll see.
And that was one of the reasons I developed the criteria. So, for example, Randy, if you are out on one bond, and I'm sure some of those out there would probably say he should be out on more than one.
This is true.
That's
a whole other segment.
If you were out on just one felony bond,
right,
and you were charged with murder, and there was nothing else, guess what?
They never made the list.
You didn't make that list. Trust me, there were dozens of defendants who were out on a single bond who were charged with murder that did not make the list.
And again, the whole point of this is it's multiple bonds. It's not just one bond and you committed or allegedly committed a new crime. It's a pattern. It's multiple bonds. And you were talking before about 5, 6. We've seen up to 12, 14 bonds on One defendant.
Well, you look at one of the stories we did involved a young lady, Teresa Seck, who has become near and dear to us at Crimestoppers, and her brother, Patrick Akins, was allegedly murdered by one of the defendants. One of the defendants, Darian Caraway, had just finished doing a 5-year stint for aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. So he's been to big boy prison. He gets out of prison, and then immediately he gets charged with 7 felony crimes in Harris and in Fort Bend County. And I'm talking aggravated robberies, felon in possession, and he keeps getting bond after bond after bond after bond. And just going back to the point that you made earlier, you know, there used to be an adage that if there was one bond per customer,
Yeah.
you were out on bond and you were charged, particularly with another felony, you weren't getting out again. And that's what we started repeatedly focusing on, are those types of offenses in so many of these lives that, from my perspective, yeah, they're tragic, but they were so utterly preventable because the defendant pretty much bared his bones as to who and what they were. We're going to continue to commit crimes.
Well, and the whole idea of, okay, if you're putting somebody out on bond, and that's going to be their way to continue working, to do what they have to do before they go to trial, you would think that it's a privilege. It's that you're granted that. It's not like everybody gets it. So, okay, if you want to take advantage of it by doing the right thing and going back to court and kind of keeping your life together while you are facing this criminal charge. If you're repeatedly arrested, then that means that you're not looking at this as, well, this is my opportunity to sort of make sure I'm keeping my life in order before I go to trial.
You know, there's a great saying, and I'll go back to my Star Trek days. There's a great saying by Spock: the rights of the many outweigh the rights of the few. So the rights of the law-abiding public have to be priority over the rights of defendants who continuously commit and are charged with particularly violent crimes. There has to be a point where, very simply, you say enough is enough. And for whatever reason, that's not happening in Harris County. I've seen over 60 defendants charged with capital murder. And you've done stories on defendants who back out on bond and have reoffended again. It used to be you never got a bond for capital murder, and now it's happening time and time and time again.
And we also see people that are habitual offenders where the judge could say, because of that, I'm not giving you a bond, but they still get bond.
And that's really what harps at me, is what I'm seeing, and I'm seeing it time. I see it here, I see it, and I see so many of these cases. And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at, for example, as one of the defendants, it was Zacchaeus Gaston, and there was a big press conference over the summer. I think people finally had enough, because he was on 7 felony bonds. He was on an ankle monitor. He's accused of shooting and killing his estranged girlfriend and their 1-year-old son, who miraculously, survived.
Yeah.
And he's out on 7 felony bonds. Ankle monitor's gone. There's no alerts. We didn't. Nobody said, hey, Crimestoppers, hey, we really need your help finding this guy. We think he's a threat to public safety, which, yeah, no doubt about it, he is, based on his track record. But we wait until something tragic happens. And by then, of course, it's too late. And that's what we're seeing, the residual effects and the collateral damage of this great big experiment under the title of criminal justice and bond reform.
And you've pointed out many times, look at it from the defendant side. We've seen young guys that while they're out on bond, they're ending up with more serious criminal charges. It's like we're not doing them. And
if you look, and you're not talking about, you look at the case of Frederick Jackson, 19 years old. He's now charged with capital murder of off-duty New Orleans police officer Everett Briscoe and his friend that were out there. So he's now looking, he was out on 5 felony bonds in 1 year. I mean, again, in order to rack up 5 felony bonds, you have to be out here to do that. And evidently he's not very good, because he keeps getting arrested and charged. So he pretty much showed, hey, I'm going to go and commit crimes. You let me out, I'm going to do some. So we kept spitting them out. And now you got a 19-year-old that's looking at two possible outcomes: a potential death sentence or life without parole. So you, like you said, do you think you did him any favors by releasing him when he pretty much said, I'm not going to comply with anything?
And an untold number have just fled. They just took off. Nobody knows where they are. And as you can imagine, these are the most dangerous people for law enforcement, even just the public for that matter. I mean, these are desperate people that they're going to do desperate things to stay on the run.
We, particularly Harris County, particularly public officials elected, really need to get a grip on this surging, burgeoning bond forfeiture issue. And, and the numbers that I have really bear it out, because half of the murders that I've charted in the last few months have been by defendants wanted on bond forfeitures. So the fact is that we don't know how many defendants are missing. Like, I would probably guess an entire town is gone, but I don't know. I would think we would want to know. And again, I will offer a branch, a tree, a mountain, an ocean. Let Crimestoppers profile wanted bond forfeitures, people who are out on bond for murder, for example. If they're out on bond for murder and they forfeit their bond, and now we've got a fugitive status, we will profile them and try to get them in custody before they reoffend, which is what we see.
What's the response? You've repeatedly asked Harris County officials, you've made that offer to them. What's the response you've got?
Pretty much, no response. I did meet with one of the county commissioners, and he seemed to really like the idea, particularly concentrating on his precinct. So we're waiting to see what his precinct will end up being so that we can profile, but he loved the idea of doing it. And I would think anybody would want to do that. I mean, there's no difference between someone who, let's say, breaks out of prison.
Right.
When someone breaks out of prison in Huntsville, you guys get a media alert. Fox News has breaking news, such and such broke out of Huntsville prison.
It'd be all over the
He's
place.
wanted, do not apprehend, call police if you see him. Now, the same person who breaks bond, do you ever get anything?
No.
You never get an alert, such and such took off his ankle monitor and is wanted. If you see him, call, police, call Crimestopper. Nobody ever knows that until it's too late.
And remember, the ones that we know about, we know about because they've committed a murder, or you put two and two together. Here's the defendant that's charged in this murder. You look at their criminal history, and then that's how we know of the ones that we know of. And to me, the most disturbing thing about this whole situation is I keep going back to that in my mind. This is what we know. And almost any time when it's a situation where this is what I know, there's so much more out there that you don't know.
Well, you have hundreds right now of unsolved murders. So just by simple analysis, that a certain percentage of them are going to fit this category. There's no ifs, ands, or buts, because I see it sometimes. I'll see, a guy getting arrested for a murder that took place in 2020.
Right.
I'll see it all the time. So we know the 154 is actually a low ball.
Yeah, that's not in chronological order. That's just as they surface, as they
get arrested.
Right. It's like, okay, now we know about this one. And you have to wonder, and I know you've just made this point a moment ago, it could be a city full of people that have forfeited their bond, they're on the run, and nobody, the Harris County Criminal Justice Department, you would think, would want to know this, would want to keep track of this. But if they're keeping track of it, they're not sharing the information. And you have to wonder, are you not keeping track because you don't really want to know?
There's the old hear no evil, see no evil.
There you go.
It's what we don't know, so don't ask pointed questions if you don't want to know. But we're going to continue to be pursuing that issue. And I think one of the stories we're doing tonight kind of fits the profile.
Yeah. Once again, it's where the heck is he, and what's he going to do next, or what's he already done that we don't know about, right?
And that's the sad reality. So we're doing one a week. We could do, like I said, I could do these almost every day of somebody. And again, keep in mind that Crimestoppers we're only looking at those that are charged with murder.
Right.
I can't imagine what the other categories of violent offenses must be like.
But DA Kim Ogg has made it very clear that there's no doubt in her mind that this is one of the reasons crime is going up in Harris County. She said that repeatedly.
You saw at a press conference today with the county judge and one of the commissioners. I mean, I think the days of saying, it's crime really isn't going up and stuff, those days are over and done with. Everybody
and you can't blame the pandemic for everything.
No, we did a news conference and it's clearly illustrated October of 2019. We had the district attorney, we had the police chief, we had other public officials basically calling attention to this issue on defendants being released on bond who were then charged with additional crimes. So we knew this was going on way before you even heard the term COVID.
That's right. Yeah. We were doing stories on it before we called it breaking bond, and that was before anybody had any idea that we were going to be going through a pandemic.
COVID is a convenient excuse, but if you look at the homicide rate in Harris County right now, let's say compared to 2019, it's almost like an 80% increase right now. We're getting close to the magic 600 number. I've not seen that in 30 some odd years. That's
we've never had a murder rate like that. And again, there's other crimes, robberies, burglaries, all kinds of other crimes that they're going up because a revolving door at the courthouse is spitting these people out, and they just continue their crime spree and pick up.
One of the points that, and I was watching today's press conference, and I applaud the county for acknowledging and targeting, recognizing certain areas have a higher propensity of crime. One of the things that they harped on was we're going to get repeat violent offenders. And I'm going, okay, so what's going to happen to them when you get them into custody? There's a reason that they're repeat violent offenders, because they back out to do it again. So to me, the key issue of the press conference that was held by the county today is, I think all that other stuff is great, but what happens after you arrest a violent defendant? What happens? Is he going to get back out again? That kind of was the quote, the elephant in the room that really wasn't addressed. So it's great that you're doing this. It's great that you want to target repeat violent defendants. I want to see what happens to those that are arrested and what happens.
And you cannot point to bail bonding companies and blame them. That's their business. And we keep hearing that for a time everybody thought you had to come up with 10% of your bond. If you had a $150,000 bond, you had to cough up $15,000. It's not like that anymore. It hasn't been like that for a long time, and everybody knows it. If a judge is sitting there saying, oh my gosh, I had no idea that that it was only 2, 3, 4%. Come on. I mean, that common sense will tell you that bail bonding companies are lowering their rate. They're trying to survive, because keep in mind, there's no misdemeanor bond anymore. They're not making any money on misdemeanor court. So it's all comes from felony court. So how you could blame a bail bonding company is beyond me, because that's what they do. Obviously, the people that are pushing for reform, you got to have bail bonding companies to put people out on bond. Right.
It's kind of an oxymoronic term, because yet at one point you were, particularly officials, local county officials, were of the perspective that we want to get defendants out, and we need to get them out because they're just pretrial. They're just accused. So you would think that you would be applauding and thanking the bail bond industry for saying, oh, good, we don't have to come up with 10% anymore, which was preventing some of the families from getting their loved ones back out. Now they're working with us to get them back out. So instead of saying, hey, this is great, we're getting more people out, now they've become a convenient foil for them. And
it's not the bail bonding companies that ultimately decide if you're going to be granted a bond. It's the criminal district court judge. That's what they do. or a magistrate. It's their decision. They're the ones that ultimately decide whether or not they're going to grant somebody a bond.
So, blaming bail bond industry for the rising crime rates, it's kind of like passing the buck and just kind of like the old red herring. We got to find somebody to blame.
Right.
If we're going to talk about this, but again, taking an industry that is a for-profit industry and then asking them, I'm reading this right here. Bail bond companies are setting lower bond payment for violent offenders, and we need to know what effect it's having on public safety. Our data tracker would help us gain that insight, but we need bondsmen to make the data available.
Why?
No. Why would you even? Oh, here,
right.
County. Here's all the offenders we're giving out. So you can't even have this dashboard that they were talking about a few weeks ago without the help of a private industry. Would you, in Fox News, would you be?
No. I mean, if you decided, if you go down to Fox and you say, hey, I want to know how much Randy Wallace and everybody else that works here makes, they're going to tell you no. They're going to say, we are a for-profit private company and we don't have to disclose that. I mean, that's just the way it is. Fox exists to make money. I mean, they ultimately do. Of course, we provide a public service by doing the news, but if Fox doesn't make any money, then we're not going to exist anymore. They're going to close the door. It's the same thing with a bail bonding company. They are a perfectly legal business. That's what they do. And they don't have to hand over any kind of information because, again, they're a for-profit company. They don't have to respond to an open records request.
There's an adage I've had as a victim advocate for 30 years. You don't like the law, change it. So if you don't like the statute right now, which basically gives the bail bond industry carte blanche to set whatever terms they want, guess what? Next legislative session, get a bill sponsored and put something in writing and get it taken care of.
There you go. Hey, we're going to wrap it up. Please be sure to tune in tonight at the 9 o'clock newscast for tonight's Breaking Bond, and we'll see you next Tuesday at 3 o'clock. God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Next month. This is it. No more November. We're done.
Thanks for watching. Bye.